Well, we're back on the Nissan again. So what are we doing this time? More junk parts. Maybe they ought to change their slogan to, we'll get you off the side of the road and leave you there. Okay, so the problem has been the upper radiator hose twice. Let me get it tore apart. We'll do a quick time lapse, then I'll tell you about what the problem is. And we'll give it a minute. So if you follow my channel, you've seen all the work that I've done on this truck, trying to make it a reliable daily driver. So let me tell you what happened to me the other night. I work at night, so I was getting off 3 o'clock in the morning. Went out, it's been cold, it was in the 20s, so I walked out just a few minutes before I was to get off my shift, went ahead, cranked my truck up so that it could be warming up. Finished up what I needed to do in the shop, closed everything down, punched out, went out and got in my truck. Noticed, and then I noticed that the heat was warm, but it wasn't exactly what it should be. I was like, oh, okay, alright, whatever. Knew it was cold, so it might take a little bit longer for the truck to warm up to give me some heat inside the cab. No big deal. So I'll go out and I hit the highway, and I hit first gear, and I'm taking on second gear. All of a sudden the air coming out of the vents feels like an ice cube, and I'm like, what is going on here? So I look down at my temperature gauge, trying to figure out what's going on, and I look and my temperature gauge is shooting up. I can physically see it moving up. So I'm like, oh crap, here we go again. So I pull over to the side of the road, I shut the truck down, and before I can even get out to go around there and open the hood and look, steam's boiling out from under the hood. I'm like, what now? Because I know that I've already replaced all the molded hoses back behind the firewall, up under the intake, all the really hard to get to hoses I had replaced because I knew they were original OEM hoses, and I put Gates hoses on there. But I had this hose came with the truck. Still had the label on it. It looked like it was brand new, because I got the truck from my grandfather, and it looked like he had not long put this hose on. Hose looked good. When I took it off to do the cylinder head service, so I'm like, okay, hose is fine. I'm gonna put it back on. This is a Daco hose. So let's go back a few steps here. When I put this hose back on the truck after doing the cylinder head, Nissan and Toyota and several of them use a wire band clamp that are reusable. They're excellent clamps. Probably can reuse them the entire life of the truck. Okay, they make a really good product. Take your time getting them apart. You can put them right back on, and they get tight and they stay tight for, you know, the length and time of the hose. It stays on the vehicle. What happened was, about a month and a half ago, give or take, whatever it's been, I noticed that there was a coolant leak. And I looked, and where I had put that wire clamp hose on the hose, it had really sunk down into the hose, and I attributed it to, okay, I got too carried away with my air ratchet. I pulled the clamp into the hose too tight. I cut the hose. My fault. I'll take responsibility for it. I did it. So, what I do is where it was leaking was right out here, okay, right along the seam where the clamp had it. So what I did, take the hose, drain the coolant, pull the hose off, and I cut the bad section off, and I put that same wire clamp back on, put the hose back in place. But this time I take care to make sure that I do it with a hand ratchet. I watch the hose and I gently get it squeezed down to where it's supposed to be, and I'm like, okay, we should be good to go. Fill it back up with coolant. All right, carry on till, like I said, 3 o'clock in the morning the other morning. It did the same exact thing. So, in order to get back going again, fortunately there is enough hose on this section, as you can see how much I've cut off twice. I was able to cut it back. I went and dug it through my scrap box in the shop at work, because I was able to limp it back over to work. I was only a few blocks from work. Cut the hose off, put a regular worm screw band clamp back on this hose, filled it. Fortunately, I keep coolant with me and all that. Filled it back up with coolant, and everything's right as rain. Came on home. But let me talk to you a minute. The problem I see and have seen with Daco hoses. I've had Daco hoses. We use them on our trucks in our fleet at work, because that's what we're contracted to buy. I've seen Daco hoses for no reason split in the molded bend. Get like an aneurysm out on it and then just blow out for no reason. I can't explain it. I'm talking about 2012 model trucks. We'll run them 400,000 miles, and they will have had the original OEM hoses on them, never have a leak, never have a problem. And we go in and have, say we put a water pump on, or we put a radiator in, we're like, okay, let's go ahead, 400,000 miles, let's take that old hose off, let's put on some new hoses. You know, it's good maintenance practice. And then in 6 months time, that Daco hose you put on, like I said, develops an aneurysm and blows out for no reason. I've seen this repeatedly, time and time and time again with Daco hoses. Like I said at the beginning of the video, they really need to change their slogan to, we'll get you off the side of the road and we'll put you there. So if you absolutely positively that's all you can get your hands on is a Daco hose to fix something to get you off the side of the road or to get you going again for a few days, keep it in the back of your mind that you need to go find a Gates hose to replace it with, or an OEM hose. I've never had any issue with Gates. I'll throw this in here. I'll take it and let you know where Gates is made. Gates says it is made in the USA. Okay? Does that always mean that you're going to get a quality product? Not always. There's stuff made in the USA that's garbage, you know. But this is just more of the outsourcing and problems you have with this stuff. When we're getting cheap parts to save you money, and in the end, is it really saving you money if you have to buy it twice, tear it down again, and do the work again? Is that really saving any money? Alright, so I guess that's going to be enough of a rant for today on more cheap parts. So let's get rid of this thing. And let's put on this good Gates hose. Alright, let me include a tech tip in here, something you might be able to use in your shop, and something that I decided to do, and it helps me keep things from getting screwed up. Alright, I use a square pan. This is an oil drain pan. It's able to be sealed up, you know, so it won't leak and make a mess. I use a square or rectangular one for coolant only. There's never any oil put in here, only coolant. A lot of times on my vehicles, I make sure that the coolant level stays where it's supposed to. I make sure it stays at 50-50. I try to use similar coolant in all of my vehicles. And I can take this and keep an empty jug, use a little funnel, and I pour it back in the jug so that I can put it back in the vehicle. That way I don't have to go buy coolant every time. If you keep your coolant level at 50-50 all the time, as best you can put it right back in the vehicle with no problems. So remember that. Get you a square jug, designate it for coolant only, and keep you an empty jug around so that you can catch it up, and it makes it a little easier to pour back in the vehicle. Alright, while we're at it, let's give this a twofer tech tip. On a vehicle like this, on most vehicles with an upper radiator hose and design set up like this, some newer model vehicles, the upper, what would be considered the upper radiator hose, is further down. It's a little more difficult to do this. But when you're refilling your coolant system, it helps get all the air out of the system if you will pre-charge that upper radiator hose, and it fills in and helps backfill the block. On some vehicles, it doesn't matter what you do. This helps some, but some vehicles, it's just hard time getting them to burp out and get all the air out of them. But on this truck and on that Camry over there, it has gone pretty smoothly in the past doing this process. So, see if I can spill it everywhere. There we go. Carefully and slowly fill the upper radiator hose and start filling up the block. But don't be a dummy and forget to put your ring cup back in. Where's the hole? There it is. That was almost a disaster. The cart before the horse. Alright, back to it. Pop your hose on. Make sure it's not rubbing anything. Oriented the right direction and tighten it up. Now, fill the rest of the coolant system up. Let her sit here and warm up. We'll bring you back, tell you a couple more things. Alright, well there we go. Got all the coolant back in it. Let it run for just a few minutes till it warmed up, thermostat opened, and then we went ahead and topped it on the rest of the way off. There's just to show you. Daco coolant hoses, junk. Try to get Gates or OEM wherever you can. Thanks for coming by the Real World Garage. I hope this has been insightful for you and give you some help in keeping your car on the road. Now, until I can put up another video, why don't you go watch one coming on the screen right now.